Hi, welcome once again in Debatiendo Law, a space dedicated and created to understand, contextualize, and develop critical thinking based on global macroeconomic situations. This time, we're going to talk about possible solutions to overcome poverty in Somalia, a situation that beyond being economy is humanitarian with serious problem of access to basic services such as water, food, and health. To learn a little more about Somalia, we will talk a little about its geography and population. With 37,000 kilometers located in the Horn of Africa, bordering Ethiopia, Kenya to the east, and Djibouti to the north. Somalia has an estimated population of 15.6 million people. UNFPA is 2019. Also, there is no official census, and all estimates are approximate due to the nomadic nature of part of the population. Being its capital, Mogadishu, with 2.6 million inhabitants. There are 2.1 million internally displaced persons in the country and some 900,000 refugees lives in the neighborhood countries. As the example of Kenya, where there are 263,000. Additionally, it should be noted that 2 million people live abroad that are known as diaspora.
Of course, Advance is will talk about geography and population, also talk about the indicators of Somalia, then will open as to the central issue, which is the poverty of Somalia. The most relevant here will be GDP in economy, morals, and fertility rate in demograph indicator GDP as reported by the World Bank is the 0.37 billion dollar with an annual growth of 2.8%. Its GDP per capita of $3,032 in the demograph part. The representative indicator is the fertility rate. Green indicate that each woman can has an approximate of up to 6 children. This leads to infant mortality rate of every 1,000 children born 79.79 generating concern because the population growth rate is 2.9%, and this shows some of the most important Somalis indicator.
So this leads to the infant mortality rate of every 1,000 children born, um, 79.7 dying, and generating cancer because the population growth rate is 2.9%. Political geographic entity known as Somalia. Somalia is located on the Africa Hangware on the complete map in 1998. Usually includes in a central position the territorial areas of Somalia, surrounded by Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya. In host areas of the terrestrial sphere, it is possible to correlate precipitation, rainfall, current famine, predictive farming, and aid targets and try to calculate drought and famine in East Africa or Horn of Africa. In reports from FuseNet, a famine early warning system network, and UNOCHA, United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs.
Yes, however, all these explained the low level of growth winds are mainly based on private consumption of 2.8% in 2018, according to estimates by the International Monetary Fund, with the consequent deterioration in the humanitarian situation. The SHOA, United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, estimate that 5.2 million Somalis will need humanitarian assistance in 2020. This wide estimate what is expected in the next 3 years, of which on point to million an emergency situation. There are also 2.6 internally displaced people concerned by insecurity and the economic situation, and additionally 1 million children with malnutrition, right? Wilt.
Is a situation that occurs when a country or geography area does not have enough food and resources to provide food for the population, raising the death rate due to hunger and malnutrition. Most deaths from hunger are due to permanent malnutrition. Families simply do not have enough food, or perhaps they don't have the resources to buy it due to scarcity. This, in turn, is due to the extreme poverty. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations (FAO) estimates that some 920 million people in the world suffer from hunger and malnutrition. And in 2011, this representing 13.2% of the world population. To bring the reader closer to the case study of Somalia, we collect the expression of a direct observer who notes, I have seen with my own eyes the suffering of Somali people who seek safety and food, refuge children who die, and their mothers who have become walking skeletons and are faced with the dilemma of which child to save, said Antonio Guterres, the UN High Commissioner for Refuge.
The region also experiments service drones in some areas that further resound habits the population, affecting the by HIV and AIDS, the international dispatch, and the lack of sufficient infrastructure to provide coping mechanisms is a serious cause of food insecurity and vulnerability. The fact that has broken out is the Horn of Africa, affect Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti, and several provinces in southern Somalia has put this country on the map again in the ASAP on news until the London result. Africa ranked high in the interest of the media. It holds the only pressure to send urgent humanitarian aid so that Al Shabaab won't allow its entry into the zone.
Back at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s of the transformation that gave way to so-called unipolar world and the collapse of the socialist camp brought with a global change in the political, social, and economic. In Africa, several party systems failed to regain stability by assuming multi-partyism. In the area of the African Horn, wounds were opened that have not healed, and the first struggle for power within a society increases, basically to the serious problem to underdeveloped brains.
Its pillars are livestock and incipient telecommunication sector, construction, service, diasporas, remittances, international aid, and humanitarian assistance. The country's economy is very vulnerable to the climate, assumed by the serious consequences of the drought that hit the country in the 2017, affecting Gratian, which occupies 60% of the population. Um, Reduced livestock export wins represent around 70% of the total income for export, and declaring the price of food and it's the import.
The role of the United Nations should have focused on assistance and not on imposition formulas on internal actors. It should also be noted that the greater regional presence could have been more efficient. Both the governments of the region of the Somalia leaders hope to ally themselves with the foreign positions, dismissed the leading role that should be given to the factions. Only the dialogue between them depends the success of international aid. Without serious problem in national reconciliation that include all tendencies, there could be no talk of peace in Somalia. After the failure to the UN peacekeeping mission, reconciliation process through external actors was hampered, mostly due to the not non-attendance of certain parties to the meeting called, the absence of clans and their respective political parties.
Among the situations that are being held on, the Central Bank of Somalia is promoting different reforms to point under to the lack of control in monetary field. At this time, the Somal shilling, like the Somaliland shilling, is not recognized as a means of payment outside the country. Somalia depends in this context on international aid and humanity assistance. In addition to remittance from the Somali diaspora, the latter amounting, according to the IMF, to about $8.4 billion in 2018.
The World Bank, for its part, also have a program to support Somali institutions to promote good governance, economic recovery, and job creation. At the same time, several international organizations channel humanitarian aids to the country. The World Food Program, for example, has been running extensive program since the 1980s.
Once again, we thank you for your attention. Thank you, Michelle, for uniting us in Debatiendo en la U. We hope it has been to your complete liking and interesting. This has for lunch program. We appreciate your company for videos.